All right, I think we'll begin. Namaskara, everyone. Welcome to Bhumi College Open Day. Generally, this is an event that happens in a much more grander fashion. It happens at our Bhumi College campus with a lot more uh, feeling of community with people actually meeting up. This isn't the our Bhumi way of doing things, but I think given the circumstances, uh, this is the best we could do. So welcome everyone. I think we have Bhumi College alumni joining us today. So welcome them as well. We have Sita with us, founder of Bhumi College, Bhumi Network, and founder trustee at KNA Foundation for Education as well. So maybe I'll start with asking Sita to give us a very brief intro about why she thought about starting Bhumi College, and especially given the present scenario and circumstances in the world, why the kind of learning that happens at Bhumi College and other alternative spaces across the country and world is really the need of the hour. So Sita, welcome first of all, and over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
Sita.
can you? Okay. So, the first and the most important thing that had uh, occurred to me when it came to starting some work in education, always had been something connected with nature, simply because I had the good fortune to spend a lot of time in nature when I was young. And as I grew up at that time, what was a much bigger issue, I mean, we hadn't heard of climate change, we hadn't heard of so many issues regarding the economic system, but there was a lot of talk of uh, animals going extinct, Project Tiger, and the importance of conserving animals and forests and so on. So I found there were hardly any places where youngsters were interested who felt strongly about such things could actually um, learn more and try to find ways of working in these areas, working to conserve nature and so on. Much later, as you know, in the late 90s and uh, uh, early 2000, 2005, those years, uh, we started to hear much more about climate change. All the more reason that we should, those who felt that they need to be part of the solution rather than only, observe what's happening or just be bystanders or be part of the problem. Um, there were not many places for youngsters to go learn. There were the usual academic kind of courses, which I'm not saying they're not necessary, but that is for one kind of person, the kind of specialist or the researcher who wants to go deeper into academics, um, say in biology or forestry or various kind of things. Um, Yet today, it's not specialists we need. We seem, we really, the issues, the problems are connected in with so many aspects of life today that you need a more interdisciplinary or more holistic approach. And we had already started Prakriya, the Green Wisdom School, again attempting to um, attempting to connect children a lot more with nature and help them understand the issues that humanity is faced with today. And about 8 years or 9 years after starting Prakriya, it seemed it was possible to start a course of this kind in Bhumi, the sustainable living course. And we had already started before that Bhumi Network, where we had a lot of, where we had several short programs, because we had no definite model. There were a few models, few people, but in each country, in each place, we have to work, in a way that suits our context. So, so we began working with food. The first conference that we organized was on food, health, and climate change. There were, interestingly, even a couple of scientists who were a little surprised that why you're putting food and climate change together. Those were the times when the connection was not so clearly seen. It seemed that climate change was more about carbon emissions from factories and vehicles and so on. And people had not quite realized that 35% or more of carbon emissions actually came from food and farming. So it was an awareness building kind of focus we had in the early years. Um, and from there, it seemed that we need more and more multiplier effect. We need more people, especially more youngsters, um, where it was not about stuffing people with content, but the learning had to be more like lighting a fire. Maybe the fire was already lit in many of these youngsters who came, who had read, who had understood, and you know what kind of uh, grave crisis that humanity could be in is already in many ways. So we started Bhumi uh, College for more intensive work, uh, and we continue the same. And we've just chosen not to go in for only I mean, any kind of an affiliation or whatever, which restricts our way of learning only to kind of intellectual learning. Whereas here, learning we realize has to be more holistic, has to touch on the emotional, the physical hands-on work, um, getting in touch with pioneers and great thinkers and doers in the field. Also understanding, being in touch with what is sacred in nature and in human and with humanity, so that uh, the depth with which we can work and engage becomes very different. So that's the brief history about how we started Bhumi College.
Thank you, Sita, for that introduction. Hope you can stay back if some of the participants have any questions. Maybe you can, maybe you can answer them.
Yeah, sure, I'll be here.
So, okay. Thank you, Sita. Before we start, Rama, Farah, are you guys in? I think maybe they are not logged in yet. Farah, I'll just.
We are here.
Rama, yeah, you guys are here. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you are disconnected in between. So would you like to begin the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I guess so.
So just a request to everybody that they mute themselves while the presentation is going on, and if you have any questions, you can use the chat box definitely. But if you'd like to ask questions, reserve it for the end of the presentation. We have a specific time allotted for Q&A. Thank you.
Adil,
Yes,
can
Farah?
you give me right to share the screen?
Yes. I think you can share screen now.
Let's not see. This doesn't go. Adil, can we remove this black thing that is coming on top? Waiting room, the waiting room notification.
You can just click on the drop down and just click on close.
Sorry? I can close it?
Yes, you can.
PPT has to go from the beginning. Just a minute. So. Okay, there is some issue. One sec.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me, Adil?
Yes.
So we'll run a short PPT so that there's also some visual input that each one gets. So Sita briefly shared about the genesis of the college and the intent and vision with which it was started. I'll begin the PPT with what are our first principles. Now, when we say first principles, we mean what are the foundational principles, what are our guiding principles for running the college and for offering these two fellowship programs. So, Bhumi, as you all know, is an alternative learning space. And one of the things that we felt ought to be, you know, what we stand for is to foster earth consciousness, because all education ought to be about nature. And sadly, what we see today is earth consciousness is done in a very tokenistic way. So we felt that that should be like the most significant part of learning that happens in Bhumi. Also, if we have to move towards a more ecocentric way of living from a human centeredness that we all are with, we need to truly clue in with nature's principles and learn from nature and apply those principles, and make them our guiding principles. So, diversity. How do we honor and respect diversity? Diversity in the individuals that come for the fellowship program, diversity that exists in nature, because then that helps us focus on process of collaboration, learning for learning's sake, and learning as a journey of unfolding than just imposition of some content for some exam. Interconnectedness and interdependence, because that is so primal in nature, and uh, that is something that we as a species need to look at, that we are all interconnected. And how do we live out those principles, not just intellectually but experientially as well? Flow and cyclicity in nature, there is flow of energy, flow of resources. How do we live by that? How do we flow with what is live within us, what makes sense to us? Part and the whole, which is something I think the modern um, living has kind of made us disconnected from or alienated from, that we belong to this earth, we are part of this larger whole, and we are not apart from it. So how do we incorporate this principle as a very fundamental principle to live by and learn from? And how do we tap into our energy for action, for proactivity, and live out from our beliefs? Sita mentioned earlier that there were not too many models available. So one of the things that we looked at was, how do we anchor in our beliefs and move from there, take action from there? A lot of learning that happens in conventional schooling becomes reductionist and linear. Um, so there's a lot of fostering of linear logic. So at Bhumi, we consciously said that there should be space for a holistic spirit of inquiry, not just intellectual learning, but learning about what we can do with it physically, tuning in with what we are feeling strongly about it as well, and also look at anchoring in reverence, not just treating the earth and her resources as something we can just dip into all the time. Um, Another guiding principle or first principle at Bhumi is building the community. So here the learning is not about I, me, myself, my grades, my lessons or my projects. It's about how do I learn with the other fellows, how do I learn from each other, and how can I build community, because that's going to be very integral to living sustainably on earth. Another important aspect or guiding principle for us is deeply engaging with one's own self, one's own inner landscape, um, to 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 get in touch with what could be my possible blind spots, what could be my gifts, which possibly I'm not aware of, and engaging with myself and my life story in a group setting releases a lot of energy for me to to anchor in myself and to work with others. So these are some of the first principles that we um, you know have anchored in as we have offered these fellowship programs through the years. The next slide, Adil.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. So I'll take you through the two fellowship programs and what is the structure of these programs and what is the focus that we keep in these two programs. So the two programs, two fellowship programs are holistic education and sustainable living. Both are of 9-month duration, and these 9 months include 7.5 months of sessions at the campus, at Bhumi College campus. And these 7.5 months, while there are sessions that are facilitated uh, by some of the people, by some of the facilitators who come, other than that, there are things like real life project, field trips, hands-on work. So through the year, we try and bring in a diversity of engagement so that the learning is not only from the head. So that head, you work with your head, you work with your hands, and you work with your hearts. And so therefore, we try and create spaces for integration of each of these three. So real life project gives an opportunity where you really engage with the topic deeply. You do research, you do experiments, you find out, you try out things, and generally you work in a group. And there are field trips to different spaces, to a farm, to a learning space, where you go and observe. So learning by observing how other people are doing things, and by asking questions, by looking at how things are done. Hands-on work is an integral part of the curriculum at Bhumi College. So every day, the morning, the session begins with the hands-on work. So all the fellows, they engage either in gardening or taking care of the space or working in the kitchen. So that's how they begin the day. Another very important aspect of learning that we believe in is like learning by doing things. So the organizing events. So through the year, there are multiple events. Bhumi Sante, that is once, that is twice every month. Then Bhumi Utsav we have on 2nd October. Then Open Day, that kind of close when we close the year for a batch. So all these events are designed, held, uh, coordinated and anchored by the fellows. And that, in my experience, that is very, very rich learning, because you learn to work with each other, you learn to work with emergent, you learn to resolve conflicts, because when you work with each other, there are those interpersonal dynamics, and then you work with those. So in addition to these things, we have a 6 weeks of internship. uh, that is again, we go through a process. So we have one-on-one session with each fellow in kind of helping the person decide on what kind of internship would be suitable, looking at their future plans, looking at what is their vision for themselves and what is their interest area. So we have these sessions and we help them finalize what kind of internship they would like to do. And internship is again very experiential engagement. So this is the structure of the 2 fellowship programs. So the methodology, as we are not a formal mainstream system, so we are trying to do methodology which is more conducive for learning, which allows for a more joyful learning rather than making learning a boring experience. So first thing is it's very experiential. So a lot of 50% of the curriculum is very experiential. People actually, whether through activities or through exercise or through presentations, people have this experiential learning. Active learning method is followed where yeah, facilitators are there, but when we follow the active learning method, the onus of learning is on the fellows. So it may be driven, it may be initiated by the facilitator, but after that, taking it forward, going deeper and reviewing it, asking questions, that that onus is left on the fellows. And a lot of time, the learning is in the small group discussions. And there the belief is that the learning is not only from one facilitator, but the learning is much more enriching when it is peer learning, when everyone joins in, because everyone is coming with their own experience, their own wisdom, their own knowledge. And when each one shares their perspective, so rather than having one perspective, we have 25 perspectives on an issue or on a topic. And so we do not have any prescribed books here. So our reference material is formed by we have a library, we have multiple books on varied topics. We have videos, we have films, and these make up the resource that we have for the fellows. So we have book reviews, film reviews, that is part of the learning. Then we have student-led sessions. So we have a fixed curriculum that we have designed and we have prepared. But other than that, if any fellow feels that they have something that can add to the learning of the group, then they are free to schedule a session and offer it to the group. Reading and research again is a part of the course. So there's, from time to time, there'll be a lot of reading material that will be given. There'll be a lot of research that you may have to do on your own and present to the rest of the group. Now, like I said, we do not have textbooks or there are no notes that are given. So the journaling and documentation becomes an important part. So every week, you have a time for journaling your week's journey, so to say. What was the learning experience? What are the questions you are left with? What are some of the topics you would want to go deeper into? So that documentation becomes an important resource for each fellow. And sometime when they have year-end presentation, this becomes a valuable thing because they draw from this document. And there are presentations from at the end of every module. Again, they present their learning from that module. And end of the year, the presentation is based on their entire journey at Bhumi. So this is the methodology that is followed at Bhumi. So the focus in these 2 programs for holistic education. So if you look at in today's time, the education system, the focus is how do I perform better? How do I get higher marks so that I can get admission in the so-called best college and then have a good career? So that seems to be the objective of any most formal education system. And in that, we forget that each child is made differently. Maybe there are some children who can perform well, who are academically oriented and can do well in that kind of system. But there are many others who suffer in that system. So how do we humanize education where uh, we consider each child's learning ability, learning propensity, and learning disposition, and design a space that is more inclusive, that is more humanizing for all kinds of learner and not only for one type of learner. Also looking at education, which is not only textbook and exam based, but uh, makes a child aware of some of the other things, whether it's social, environmental, ecological, what's happening in the world. So move out of the book and be sensitive to some of the things that are happening in the world. And that brings that the concern for some of the macro issues. So children learn.
Are we still there?
Adil, are we there? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, okay. So yeah, so they look at, so that the curriculum includes some of these issues that are happening around them in their neighborhood, in the world, in the social world. So they become a little more sensitive citizens. They become a little more how do I say, like more aware and more sensitive citizens is what I would like to say. And yeah, and one of the another important thing, like I've said earlier also, creating conducive learning environment where each child feels that I belong here, this is my space as well. Because very often what we see, like the kind of education system, at least I have gone, only the front row gets the attention of the teacher and the rest feel that they don't belong here. So how do we create an environment, learning environment, where each child has the space? So the focus in the sustainable living program, uh, so here the focus is that how do we rethink, review, and redefine a lot of things that are happening in the current time. So whether it's the current consumerist paradigm, which is pushing everyone to just consume without being without considering that what my action is doing to the rest of the world, or what my action is doing to the environment, and what is the notions of a good life. So if you see, the notion of a good life is that like if I'm an achiever, if I have a good job, if I'm living in a posh apartment, if I have a nice car, if I travel abroad. Now in this, I think COVID has helped us in redefining many of these things. So that has been the notion of a good life. But is that really a good life? If we actually pause and reflect, what at what cost does this good life come? What is the quality of my life? How much time am I able to spend with my dear ones? And do I get a fulfillment end of the day? Do I feel anchored within myself end of the day? So reviewing that and redefining those notions. Again, the notions of success and achievement, which is based only on my academic performance, or on my materialistic achievements. So how do I change that? Engaging with the earth conscious ways of living, whether it's simplifying my life or treading on earth more gently, being aware of, being sensitive to other beings that are part of this ecosystem, and moving away from anthropocentric ways of living, and feeling that embeddedness, that I'm part and not a part, as Rama said earlier. Another very important aspect of this, the focus of this course, is that very often we immediately jump to the easy solution. Say, okay, this is the issue, so this can be an easy solution. Instead of jumping to that, can we look at what are the root level issues and go back to what has caused those issues and work at that level, and not jump to simplified, easy solutions. So this is how the focus is kept for these two programs. I think now Rama will give you details of the modules in each of these two programs.
Can I just come in for a moment before you get into the modules, Rama?
Yeah, sure, Sita.
Sure,
Huh?
Sita, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to emphasize something that's part of both the fellow programs, and that is basically the importance we give to meeting a lot of pioneers and thinkers and doers and various fields, be it in alternative education or in, we have, people like Mr. Devinder Sharma, who's a food and agriculture policy analyst, or we would have Dr. Aseem Srivastava, who's an ecological economist. Not many ecological economists in India today. And so on, and many others too, who have been working with water, with legal issues, and so on. And I think an important part of these courses is that each one gets fired, gets touched by different issues that we face in life. And similarly, each one can get very deeply inspired by some of the people they get to meet. And it's not just meeting for a session or so, but many of these people are as concerned as we are in Bhumi that to share their experiences, thoughts, and learning. And they continue very often to keep in touch. And I think this kind of networking with not only other fellows, but also with some of our senior fellows who are already doing something interesting in life, as well as some of these pioneers, to have that as a community, to find co-travelers among such people is of very great value, I believe, for many fellows. And that is something we would like to sustain. And we are also thankful that so many such teachers, such, such people who've done very valuable work in the world are joining Bhumi College to connect with students and help in our education process. Yeah, sorry, I just thought that's an important thing to emphasize.
Absolutely, Sita. I think it is.
Thanks,
I think
Sita.
Ashish Kothari, Devinder Sharma,
Yeah.
they are practitioners who have been doing this for 4 decades, close to 4 decades. And so really getting in practitioners and people who have done the on-ground work and have been doing specialized work for decades really adds to the fellowship. And I think Rama and Farah have a slide regarding all
Yes,
the,
yes.
yeah, so I think
Yeah.
they'll get to that.
So shall I continue?
Yes, Rama, please go ahead.
So we'll briefly share about the modules we offer. So some of the modules are common to both the fellowship programs. We have listed those. The first one, the foundation module, which is connecting to land, self, and community, is common to both. Through this module, we explore our connections to ourselves, to the land, to the community that we are part of, and again, not just intellectually, but experientially. Then we have a module on holistic nutrition and well-being, because really looking at the food we eat can be one significant way that we can live sustainably, because on an everyday basis, if I focus on safe food, then what's good for me is also good for the earth. We have a module on communication and expression because in today's time and age, to communicate many of these thoughts and ideas and spread it across, this is an important tool, whether it's social media, whether it's films. So we have a module on that. And we have found that fellows find it not just interesting and um, allowing their creative juices to flow, but also it becomes an important medium that they learn about. Ecological living in urban areas, wherein we look at issues of water, waste, energy, eco-construction, all of those are looked at in this module. Education for sustainable living. How should education be if we need to live sustainably on earth, to tread gently on earth? This module is interestingly anchored by fellows from both the fellowship programs. So there is also a dialogue and a space to share all that they have learned. So together they can reflect on what should be the key elements for education for sustainable living. We have a module on equity and social justice because it is so linked with um, issues of inequity and social injustice is so linked to environmental degradation and so on and so forth. We have a module on social entrepreneurship, which is led by one of our senior fellows of Bhumi, who is himself a social entrepreneur. And then we have this module, which is called Ecological Options for Livelihood, wherein a lot of pioneers who have chosen livelihoods which are more in tune with the earth come and engage with fellows. Also, there are specific modules for each fellowship program. So these are some of the modules specific to the Holistic Education Fellowship. So while we start with principles for a learning program which is conducive to creating a conducive learning environment, one also needs to look at processes and practices that will enable teachers to put it into action. So there's an entire module on that. Then there's a module on theories and philosophies of education by Indian thinkers. So whether it was Gandhiji or Tagore or Sri Aurobindo, many of these thinkers had some powerful thoughts and ideas and philosophy and practices which is suited to our context. So how do we value our own roots and take from there rather than emulating a Western model of education? Place-based education. How can education be more place-centric? So we have a module on how can you build perspective so that we can foster a place-based education, which would do well for not just rural areas, but even urban areas. How do we bring that focus? Theater and storytelling are very important tools and methods to to teach, to learn. So there's an entire module devoted to that. And life skills education, which is critical for looking at children as beings in their own right, and how do we help them, empower them um, to, to take care of their own dignity and their own well-being. So this module is focused on that. There are a few modules which are very specific to sustainable living. One is, of course, the ecological farming. This is a 6-week long module. One is the longest modules for this fellowship program. And herein the fellows are introduced to different approaches in ecological farming. Um, so of course, to get a comprehensive understanding is hard. in 6 weeks, but there are triggers given here. There is hands-on work, there's meeting practitioners for the fellows to take forward whatever really triggers them the most. We have a module on economics for well-being to question this dominant paradigm where economics dictates how we should be living. So how can we look at earth-centric way of living with an economics for well-being? Then we have a module on design for sustainable living. So here we explore beyond just practices of or principles for eco construction, but how can we have design principles wherein ecocentrism becomes the starting point? So Sita has already mentioned about our visiting faculty, people who are practitioners, pioneers, thinkers, activists, who have been in this field for many decades. So meeting them and engaging with them for the fellows, it becomes a journey of being inspired, of feeling
I think there's some issue with the internet there. Sita, Sita, are you there?
So here we have listed a few more of our visiting facilitators. Some of them are also senior fellows of Bhumi. The engagement with all of these people are very intense and helps our fellows to really look at what is it that they wish. However, because that's not possible now, we've just brought a few pictures for you. This is the hostel space. This is our classroom, which we call Ananda Hall. So we have some administrative information for anyone. There's an error here. We haven't updated the last date to apply. It is not 31st March. It is 31st May. It's been extended to 30th June now. I don't need to read it out, right? I mean, everyone can. So we are done, Adil.
Yeah. So if there are any questions regarding the presentation, the fellowship, or if there's something that you would like to ask Rama, Farah, or Sita at this point, you can go ahead. We'll wait for a minute maybe for questions to come up. If there are none, then we'll move on to, I think we have 3 or 4 of our alumni waiting to share what they've been up to after the fellowship? Because that's a common question that we get from applicants, from people who want to do the course or who are interested in the fellowship. That what are the alumni up to after the fellowship? So I think from that perspective, we have 3 or 4 people waiting, so 3 or 4 alumni waiting to share their experiences. So did you reduce the fellowship duration? I don't think so, right? It's 9.5 months, maybe. So, so it's been the same. So if there are no other questions, what we can do is we can have the alumni sharing begin, and then maybe if participants have questions for the alumni as well, they can ask them. I think last time when we did the open day, a lot of participants wanted to know how the alumni kind of handle their finances, how do they look at the idea of work and other questions. So maybe those will come up today as well. So what we can do is we can start with the alumni sharing. So anyone who wants to go first, Sai Manoj, would you like to go ahead? You can maybe introduce yourself and then. Sure, Sai, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Adil, you can see the slides, right?
Yes, you can
Yeah.
put it in slideshow mode, and then it'll be.
Yeah, now is it okay?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, hello everyone. Thank you, Bhuvi, Varanama, for asking me to come here.
Sai Manoj, we're having an issue with the audio. I think you'll need to keep the mic a little closer, maybe.
Yeah, I'm actually holding the mic.
I know.
Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Is it better?
Yeah, better now.
Okay, so I'm a 2017-18 batch and I've taken holistic education. Thanks to Rama and Farah for inviting me for this. Yeah, so I just want to say hi to everyone, and I'm so sorry that I'm feeling sorry actually that the way Open Day is happening, because Open Day, it's a very great experience. I mean, at least the way we had in April 2018, I think it's a great experience where everyone was involved and everyone was doing. So yeah. So quickly going to the slide. So this is the first slide that I have. It's basically me before joining Bhumi Fellowship or Bhumi HE course. So I was working as a teacher even before that. So it's been like 3 years then, and I was in the mainstream school. And I could see a lot frustrated, like myself as a teacher. Also, the reason is because I feel like there's very little flexibility as a mainstream school teacher. At the same time, even children also I felt like not enjoying much because of the very little freedom that they have in the schools. So I was looking at alternatives, and I've been reading a lot about alternative education, but like I thought of interning in some alternative schools there, and that's when I happened to come across Bhumi course. Like as I was going through the website, the modules and the course structure and everything, I feel like this is right for me. Like I didn't know like anything about it. Like this college is not having any accreditation or anything. It was in Jan, and I just saw that, and then I felt like, yeah, this is what I want. So I don't know what's next, but I want to do it. That's how I ended up in Pune. Like the quick learnings, if I have to say about through the 9 months, 9.5 months, I will just summarize it in 3 different ways. One, throughout the 9 months, I was trying to look at the first one as a student myself. Throughout my schooling, my college happened in a mainstream school, mainstream college, but how different it is being in an alternative college like a Bhumi. Like I was looking at myself, like what I'm learning. Like I could see myself that I learned something that I really felt needed. Something I really feel like very much needed. Like something like a farm module was more appealing to me, maybe compared to a module on, let's say, on clothing or maybe eco-construction. Because I feel more connected to farm, or I see myself in the future like where I'll be doing farm. So I feel like I'm looking at myself as a student. Like what I really learned is I learn things when I feel like there's a need for that. Secondly, like I feel the way the culture of Bhumi is, I was able to express myself better just because there was no judgment as such in the whole atmosphere, in the whole environment. And and one more thing, as a student, I felt like I'm learning things, new things, uh, just because I don't really feel scared that I won't be able to do much. Like even if I fail, that's okay. So I was of that mood. So this is something I learned as being a student. Second thing is regarding the philosophies. Like before that, I got some experience as a teacher, but then here I would say the exposure to different kind of philosophies. Like for us, Rama, they've been mentioning a lot about Gandhiji's the Naitali philosophy or Rabindranath Tagore or Jit Krishnamurti's. Like I think the kind of exposure either through personal visits to school or by having someone come to a college and having conversations with them. I think that really helped. We also watched quite few videos, like for the night time we watched Anil Niketan School's video. I think all those exposure, at the end of it, I was able to make my own perspective about education and what it should be for me as a facilitator, like, or if I start my own learning space, like what kind of education I want to provide to children on the youngsters. I think that clarity I got, because of this exposure to different philosophy. And the third aspect is, I don't know if the clip art is it's referring to that, but what I mean was sustainability. Whether it's referring to that or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, so the aspect of sustainability, I feel like when I was 25, 26 at that time, I didn't have enough exposure on the aspect of sustainability. Boomi course, the HE course, holistic as well as the sustainability, they go parallelly, and there are few modules which are there together. And I was staying in the hostel, so I could interact a lot with the fellow students who are in sustainability course. So I could understand a lot of aspects of it and deep to the issues which are related to that. That society level or systematic level of thinking I was able to develop. And I could see like myself, like post course, like now it's been like 2 years now. I could practice a lot of those aspects. Like just now, I was actually preparing my own number 2000. Small things like this, like the aspects of sustainable living, I could put into practice, like reduce the air travel, reduce the travel a lot, like travel only when needed. A lot of all these aspects I was able to put into practice into my life. And the last and the like, I would be like my friends would kill me if I don't mention all this. Like the community, I think the community, movie community itself plays a whole lot. These are all the batchmates and guest faculty who were there. I think community plays a role. Like you are in this, we are in those small pockets, and we are trying to do something different. We are trying to go against the current, and you definitely need the foothold, and you definitely need a lot of like-minded people. I think we actually gave that, like a lot of like-minded community, like who would be in touch. Just doesn't matter whether we call every day or not. Like even at the end of 2 years, if I just call that person and if I say, it's what I want, that I know for sure that they're going to give me that. I think a community place. I think Bhumi as a college gave me that like-minded community, and just to have a common. Um, I finished my like HE course April 2018, and post that I was actually working part time for an NGO called Shaishav, and I actually tried on my own a course on social emotional learning with government schools. I did for almost 6 months, 6 to 7 months, and later I realized I want to be more at a learning space where I can try different things in the same learning space. Like social emotional learning is just one aspect. But maybe if I want to do theater, if I want to do, farming, only by running a small course I won't be able to do. So last year, so that's June 2019. So I started working in this school called Living Vikasa Vidyavan. So this is in Vijayawada, which is in Andhra Pradesh. It's an outskirts and it's a residential school. And for me, it's a very new experience. Like one is in a residential school, second is working with the teenagers. So every day it's a very fascinating day. Like you will come across a lot of issues. You have to take decisions every single minute. So it's quite challenging. It's fun, and I teach math and social there. And in academics, apart from that, we have like a lot of other things like farm, community work, and like performing arts. So I take even theater. I do something called forum theater, as well as I take sometimes English drama. So we have few pictures like kids performing and all the different things that happen. So through the day we are up like almost like from morning 6:30 to night 9:30. So just in case in the night around 8:30, I'm going back to my quarters. So our living space is in the same campus. So we just walk for academic cluster to the living space. So let's say around 8:30, I'm walking back to my living space, then it will ask like, why are you going so early? So it's a general expectation that you stay till 9:30. So a lot of stories are a lot of fun, and it's definitely a lot more challenging. Like I've worked in day schools, but for the first time working in residential school, and a lot of times we get frustrated. And uh, yeah, so I think a lot to share, but considering the time, like there will be a lot of questions, then uh, I can answer them. But right now, I think Adil I'm done. So this is about me. We can go forward to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Simonoj. I think if we'll take questions at the end after all the alumni have shared, so I think that will make it easier to kind of moderate for me as well. So I think maybe I'll invite Sandhya next to, if she's here.
Yes, Adil, I am. Did
right.
you receive my slides?
Yes.
Can you help me?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Sandhya, and I was part of the batch in 2018-19. Prior to Bhumi, I was in the corporate space in technology sales for about 18 years. And I'm not sure how many of you are here today looking at all practical, from a mainstream corporate, but example of somebody who decided to take a break and decided to slow down a bit from a very job. And I happened to come across the Bhumi course through the Prakriya school. And since then, I would say it's been a journey that's been fairly transformational in that sense, because I would refer back to what Farah said in terms of what our definition of a successful life is. And very often, I think, we are disillusioned in terms of what that success is. And perhaps my journey has been down that path as well. And it took some reflective time and some transformational experiences for me to see the reality for what it is. Can you change the slide, Adil? Thank you. Bhumi for me, essentially, I would think was all about the community, the people around me. And not just while I was at Bhumi, but beyond as well, because it has allowed me to look at communities, with a fresher perspective than I had earlier. Corporate experiences often, do not allow you to really look at community level engagements with deep, meaningful relationships, and that was an eye opener for me. Exploration, both inner as well as outer. I think that's part of the journey. Gives you a certain resilience to be able to handle what comes your way beyond Bhumi as well. To be able to recognize patterns within yourself, as well as to be able to connect with the external surroundings and see your relationship with that. I think the third aspect is a bit of it's something that one needs to experience, because it sounds a bit of a fluff, if I may use that word, without demeaning anybody. But it's the concept of emergence, right? Unfortunately, all through our lives, we're conditioned to question our end goals, question clear-cut paths, find directions, and those are and necessitate a need for clarity. And I think one of the things that was very important for me as a takeaway from the Bhumi course and beyond was the concept of emergence. And that was very evident in the way I approached my post-Bhumi without really pushing a immediate work that organically took me in the direction and path of what I'm doing today. So after a brief stint of not doing anything, and then exploring my thought process, Extinction Rebellion team, Bangalore. I'm based out of Bangalore. Understanding at a local level the way the narratives around it are and how people receive those narratives, I chose to move into a space that gave me a little deeper insight and localized context to climate crisis. So I started giving all my time to Bangalore Environment Trust, an organization that's about 3+ decades old. The current chairman, Dr. Yellappa Reddy, has been in the Indian Forest Services for about 4 decades, has been the conservator of forests, has been the secretary of the Department of Ecology and Environment, has also been in the Karnataka High Court Lok Adalat. So we're a small team in a fairly decent sized trust. But when I say small team, we're just 4 young women who decided to take on a very specific set of issues in a trust that comprises of many senior, experienced, ex-bureaucrats, corporate heads who have environmental underpinning of their philosophy. And what we're doing in the intersection of water and related aspects. So one of the critical that we see, Adi, did you move the slide? Because hello?
Hello?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the slide had frozen. Yeah, so so one of the things that one of the things that we're working on is in the space of water pollution. What you see here is the Bairamangala Lake, part of catchment. And as beautiful as it looks, once you look at it closely, it's not just just the foaming flow of water, but it's actually polluted, toxic industrial effluent. What you see between the basically years of accumulated effluent, and charred grass and so on, right? If you move to the next slide, Adil. What the government does about issues like this. Years of pollution and years of and continuing pollution today is basically addressed with unscientific, illogical projects that are taken on. Basically a very large contract mafia. This, what you see, is Bellandur Lake. It's the diversion channel of Bellandur Lake, where the sewage from the city, basically your Koramangala Chalagatta Valley, is being diverted while they're desilting the lake, right? So questioning some of these plans, questioning some of these projects is what we're engaged in through the process of critical thinking, looking at other similar projects, looking for those few cases where academicians, scientists, deep thinkers have been able to engage and direct the government, push the government, petition the government, go to court, involve the judiciary, and push them towards the rightful thing to do as far as ecological health is concerned. So one is the pollution, second is the way it is addressed by the government, and questioning some of those actions. The third is, if you can go to the next slide, Adil. I don't know if there's a lag. So the third is around issues of inequality that come into play as far as water is concerned. So in the Vrishabhavati Valley, which is an industrial belt starting from Peenya onwards all the way down, multiple industrial estates and industrial areas. While all the industries have access to water, communities are left without clean drinking water, because are the recipients of heavily polluted effluents in their surface water as well as groundwater, right? Addressing some of these inequalities and seeking justice for these communities. The next is in terms of the livelihoods in itself. Next slide, Adil. Livelihood of people who are dependent on this water, right? What does pollution of water mean to these people? What do these projects, these unscientific projects, diverting, the sad part of some of the catchments and the farming communities in Vrishabhavati Valley is that the farmers are desperate for water that is polluted, because that is what they have. So when you look at them, livelihoods are at stake when you divert their water away, and without any public consultation, without involving them, projects cleared with absolutely no empathy whatsoever, right? So enabling these communities, giving them an understanding. Also in terms of COVID, what does it mean for sewage water? Is there a possibility that the virus can be carried through the sewage? We came out with a report, which is there on our Twitter handle as well. What does it mean for these communities that are on their hands, feet to this water? They wash up in this water. There are communities that live by the side of these waters. What does it mean for them? Adil, if you can move on to the next slide. This then brings us to the public health aspects of what pollution of water means, what industries are doing to this water, and what health burden it carries for people, right? And who are the people who are impacted apart from the communities, those who depend on it for their livelihood? These are the ASHA workers. One of the projects that we've undertaken, after repeatedly chasing, hounding, complaining to the government, that ASHA workers who are from marginalized communities and families are the front line of our COVID battle. They are the front line as far as the peri-urban and the rural communities are concerned, to house, check on the people who are there as far as their health parameters are concerned, risk exposures are concerned, logs and histories are concerned, right? So we kind of work on their behalf, represent government as well as running a campaign, fundraising, equipping them with kits. So there are 40,000 workers in far been able to distribute 3,000 PPE kits. Started off as a wet project for our district. Now we have a dream and a vision to take it statewide. So we're in the process of doing that.
Sandy, sorry to just butt in. I think
that's
we're kind of running short on time. So maybe final couple of minutes before we end it. Can you? Hello?
Sorry, I think I got logged off.
Okay.
I was just wrapping up to say that that's essentially what I've been engaged in the last few months with Bangalore Environment Trust. And the reason I'm talking more from a trust perspective and my involvement is for people to get a sense of what direction one can take in terms of activism and advocacy and taking on the government and looking at policies and doing on ground and secondary research and so on. And to conclude, this is my little happy patch. Thank you for my time at Bhumi. I had for the lot that had brown fingers, but no greens, kind of little space that I have in the middle of the city. Today has 10 trees and gives me a little harvest on and off, but it's able to attract birds and bees and butterflies and earthworms and all kinds of little beings that I can't see. And at the end of the day, when I'm really tired from all the apathy of the government and citizens and all that, this is where I come to get my hands dirty. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandhya. That was wonderfully detailed and really inspiring. Thank you. Just a quick update on time. I think we're going to be running a little behind schedule. So if some of you have to leave at 4:30, who have a hard stop at 4:30, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, questions for Rama, Farah, Sita, or the alumni who have shared, please go ahead and use the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and ask your questions if you have any. If you have to leave by 4:30, because it looks like we might be extending this until 4:45, but we've got a couple more alumni sharing, and then we'll have a Q&A. So anyone who's got a hard stop at 4:30 and has to leave, request them to share or ask questions right now. We'll just wait for a minute. If no questions come up, we'll go ahead with the share. Sandhya, there's a question for you. Can you please briefly share your motivation to join Bhumi?
Do you want me to take it now, or?
You can use the chat box to answer if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
I can do that. Thanks.
Updates on starting date of the fellowship. Maybe Rama and Farah would like to quickly address that. And I think Farah is, yeah.
I have muted my video because there is some network issue this side.
Sure, sure. Not an issue.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the update is so we had set 15 July as opening date, but that is unlikely. We will not be able to start the college on 15 July. We are waiting to hear from the government what they announced regarding the reopening of colleges and universities, and we'll follow the same. I think somebody had asked earlier, we will not reduce the duration of the program. It will continue to be a 9-month program. So maybe we may start a month later instead of 15 July, maybe 15th or 16th August is we are hoping we would be able to start. And therefore we'll end also 1 month later. And rest
Okay.
everything in between will also get pushed by a month. Your internship period and everything will get pushed.
Thank you, Farah. I think
Adil, there's a question. Would you advise a sustainable living course for someone who doesn't necessarily have core
Simon, I couldn't hear you.
No, there's one more question that we missed out.
Oh, is it?
By Nandini. Yeah. Would you advise a sustainable living course for someone who doesn't necessarily
Right. Yeah, Nandini had a question. I don't know if Nandini is still here. I think Nandini wanted to know if a core interest in sustainability or ecology is a prerequisite for selection for the course. Definitely a
so
degree in either is not a requirement. That's, I think Rama can take this.
yeah, so we are not really looking at that you need to have a degree, an interest. If you just want to explore, you're welcome. As long as you are looking at this to engage with for yourself as an exploration, it's fine, because it's a learning journey that one can commit to and then choose to see where one takes it forward. So we are not saying that post the course you should do this or should do that. That depends on where your interest and your learning journey takes you for.
Thank you, Rama. I think no more questions as of now. So I would like to invite Suhasini if you're there.
Yes, hi.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't
Sorry, I'll
log
just,
into.
yeah, we're kind of running behind schedule. So just request is to, thank you.
So I had my photos in the laptop, but I couldn't log in through that. So I'll just share my experience briefly. So I'm Suhasini. I'm currently working with Akshay Patra Foundation in Bangalore, and specifically on a project called National Endeavor for Students Transformation, where I'm basically designing and implementing various programs in government school across the city. The idea is to bring about a holistic development for the student, and we have various programs like we give exposure to students in robotics, in music, dance, art, whatever they like. We also provide them scholarship, and how Bhumi has helped me in working here is that I've been able to see how I've been able to design programs which are child centric. Uh, uh, and from a learner perspective view. So that's about it. And tell you a little about me. I'm one of the students during my schooling that I was very nervous, and I used to hate going to the school because, because of the factory style of schooling. And but after coming to Bhumi, I couldn't believe that even the assignments can be given in the form of a song or a dance or a theater performance. So my mind just opened to various possibilities of how one can learn, and that's really helped me. Bhumi has been a really transformative journey for me, not just in my professional life, but also in my personal life, my diet, my way of looking at things, uh, how I've made different meanings, different situation has totally transformed since I came to Bhumi. And I don't think there's no looking backwards now. Maybe we don't have time, but maybe towards the end, Adil, you can show that video that I'd made for the open day, and
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, if
that
we
will
have time,
give the
definitely.
sense of
Yeah,
that will give the sense of how beautiful the journey was there in college.
absolutely, absolutely. We'll do that. Thank you, Suhasini. I think I'm trying my best to answer all the questions on chat. Then I'd like to invite Paras, if you're ready to go ahead. Paras, are you there?
Yes, Adil, do you want me to run through the presentation, or it's better I can just have a conversation with people to ensure that?
If we could, yeah, if you want to do start briefly with your journey, and then maybe we can do a very quick PPT if you want.
Sure. So,
Yeah.
hi everyone. I am Paras. I live in Delhi. I was part of Bhumi in 2012-13. It's almost 7 years, and I was just joined Bhumi after my college. So you can say the the hunger for sustainability, the knowledge to make sure that the contribution by young people. These were the thoughts which were running my mind, and I just joined Bhumi at that point of time. And my internship was with Selco Solar. The people I'm sure who are in Bangalore, people who have heard about sustainability, they are aware about Selco Solar. Who are not, who don't know much about Selco, you have to imagine that I got an opportunity to hang out with tribal people or people living in the almost interiors of one of the very prosperous states of India who never had access to energy. And I was with them. I was just looking at them, and I got to know that I, being a city dweller or someone who's living in a very privileged environment, wasn't able to contribute to sustainability the way they were doing because they were off the grid. They were using solar energy, which you say renewable energy, and they were able to reduce their carbon emission, which is something which people although debate a lot about. But what I could see is somebody was contributing, which far away from the city and in a manner that I had never really thought about. And that was one of the key learnings I still remember because being in Delhi, I still cannot really just go off the grid or and think about this coal carbon emissions or things. I have to still have to suffer from that. You can say guilt right now because youngsters really understand what renewable sources are, but due to many constraints, the governance and again the peer pressure on the government, another very number of problems, we are not able to do that in India and other states, countries also. After my internship, I somehow wanted to learn more and I joined the National Law School in Bangalore. That's National Law School of Bangalore, where I learned public policy. That was a journey in between 2014-16. And after that, I started my own not-for-profit public advocacy firm in Delhi. It's known as Center for Youth, Culture, Law and Environment. The acronym is CYCLE. If you see, it's the young person thinking about culture, law and environment so that the person can engage with the government. And yet again, sustainability was there one thought in my mind because currently what I'm doing is I am working with the farmers in Delhi. When I use the word farmers, I don't know if anybody is aware that there is a rural side of Delhi where there are 200 villages and people grow all kind of crops there. And there are so many constraints because on one hand we have this conversion of farmland to housing sites or commercial activities. And on the other hand, we are having this food shortage in the city, the kind of inflation we face, and the kind of pressure on the farmer to consider whether to sell the land or continue farming. Whether these are the two challenges I could see face to face. And luckily, I was engaged with the farming communities because I also belong to an urban village in Delhi. It was easier for me to talk to people but convince people about the whole concept of sustainability was a challenge. Luckily, during the lockdown, one interesting thing happened that there was a lockdown in the city and farmer had his crop ready. And the government said that you cannot just move out from here and there. Nobody can just go anywhere. So what we did was we used technology. We made this group in the city, and the farmers were told that look, we have a crop ready. You have fruits, we have vegetables. what we can do is we can just directly sell it to the city dwellers, either through RWAs or some associations or groups. This whole concept of APMC, Agriculture Produce Market Committees, which runs all across the country, which we are saying that for the past 4 or 5 decades, people have been suffering a lot and farmers have facing challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, think about it. The success was that farmer was able to bring his produce direct to the family, just within a reach of 20-30 kilometers, which was not happening for 40-50 years. Adil, I have a slide, the last slide in the PPT.
The
It
last
was
slide.
covered by, it's a Hindi newspaper, but it covered it.
Okay.
And
Let
it
me
was
just
very
share it.
inspiring because, can you imagine, people were throwing tomatoes outside the markets, when we say the mandi, or where people have to, the grain market or the market in the city. I was so depressed when the moment I saw that, and I run my brain through that challenge that I say. I was trying to convince the farmers, think about it, you can do it. It was difficult to convince them. No, they think nothing is possible. That's pretty bad. You can't just say that nothing is happening. What exactly did I did? I did nothing. I just asked the farmer, you have a produce? He said yes. And I said, look, there are people in the city who are willing to buy. One more interesting thing, all this produce I'm saying is organic. So farmers are growing organic food next to a city. People never understand organic also right now, no? Because there is certification involved. But luckily, the people who are, these particular farmers are in a privileged situation because they have access to good water, not contaminated water, which we always say. Like one person, I think Sandhya said, the Vrikshawati is a problem with farmers are looking for that water, that polluted water, which will help them grow their cauliflowers or other kind of brinjal or something. These are people who grow fruits, watermelon, melon, tomatoes, onions. And I'm talking about this produce which I could bring from the farmlands to the city. This is a good thing I did, and the challenge I'm facing is that how to convince the farmer to hold on to their farmland. Don't really go for this commercialization, or we say that the urbanization of India. So this is a sustainability challenge I face. It's a challenge in one way, but secondly, I've been able to do something. It's a happy journey. I still remember when I was in Bhumi, I used to see this agriculture around me, a school there, and people, how it was always a challenge to answer, how do you contribute to sustainability in your own way. Luckily, I could found something in back to my own house, my own community where I belong to. So I can answer the question when someone asks where I come from, the land, the community, the concepts. So it's like back to being back to your roots, where you can do something better and better. That's the life I'm living right now, and that's the thing I wanted to share. Thank you. Any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you, Paras. Thank you, Paras. So the floor is open now. If you have any questions for our alumni, or for our facilitators, or for Sita, or for me, you can go ahead and ask your questions. If you would like to just share something based on what you've seen, the floor is open for that as well. It doesn't only have to be Q&A. If there's something that you would like to share, please go ahead. You can either use the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask a question. So if anyone has any questions or would like to share something, please go right ahead. Otherwise, I think what I'll do is, like Suhasini mentioned, Suhasini had edited a video of her time of doing the fellowship at Bhumi. Maybe I can go ahead and play that if there are no questions.
No. Adil, if I don't hear anyone else asking questions, so I would like to ask one to Paras. Huh?
Sure, Sita.
Can I? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Paras, really nice listening to you. I just have one question, because many people who want to join, the Bhumi Fellowship have such a question to ask. That is about if many of the Bhumi fellows are able to earn a living, doing whatever they care about in sustainability. So is yours a social enterprise?
Yes.
Where, huh?
Yes,
So
it
you're
is.
able to sustain yourself through the kind of work you're doing?
I can, but I would definitely like to say that I have to use resources. No, being resourceful is something which helps you sustain yourself. If there
Yeah.
are no resources, then you have to really figure out the way how best to sustain
Okay.
this
No,
way.
but and you have a team, others working with you?
Yes, we have seven of us are together.
Okay, which means there are other people also who are able to earn a living through the work you all are doing?
Yes,
Okay, that's very nice to know. And by any chance you have a website or
I do.
some, what, I mean, if you can let us know that, at Bhumi, we are working on a website called Share Eco Wisdom, where we want many people who are doing interesting work in different parts of the country to be kind of contactable through the website if they wish to, or at least their story be told on the website. So we'll get in touch with you for that. It's really nice to know your enterprise is up and going. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, looks like there are no questions. So I'd just like to first let people know that they can, if they would like to apply for the fellowship, they can either write to us at bhumicollege@gmail.com. I'll just drop the mail ID here in the chat box, or they can always go to our website, www.bhumicollege.org, and check out
Adil,
the
also there is
application.
a question regarding, I think, the fees for the program, I guess.
Yes.
How much does it cost?
Sure, Farah. Would you like to address it?
Yeah. So the two courses, the holistic education course, the fee for the entire year is 75,000, and that includes 15,000 refundable deposit, and the sustainable living program cost 80,000, including 15,000 refundable deposit. The difference of 5,000 between the two courses is that the sustainable course involves many more field trips. So that's why the 5,000 extra goes towards field trips, more field trips for sustainable living course.
Just to add a piece of information, this course is highly subsidized by the trust that runs Bhumi College.
Yeah. I think there is a question on campus accommodation, cost of hostel as well. Farah?
I'll answer the question. Yes, we do have a hostel facility. When we showed the pictures of the spaces, there was one picture of the hostel. We can accommodate about 35 people, 35, 36 people on a double sharing basis. We double and triple sharing basis. We have men's and women's wings separate. And the hostel fee is separate. What Farah mentioned is the fellowship program fee.
Hope that answers your question, Nandini. All right, I think you did share the hostel fee, right, Rama?
She's referring to an approximate amount like that.
Hostel fee I didn't share. Hostel fee works out to 10,000 per month for double sharing and 10,000 per month for triple sharing and 12,000 per month for double sharing. The fee includes both stay and food.
All right, I think, so yeah, if if some of you are not able to join the fellowship this year for some particular reason, um, you can always check out our online modules that are going to start in July. So these could be anywhere from 6 to 8 week long modules on various topics in sustainability and education. So if you're unable to make it to the campus and do the fellowship physically this year, you always have the option of engaging with us with our online modules. So just if anyone is interested, request them to just share their mail ID with me, and we'll be happy to keep you updated on um, those modules.
I just
Yeah,
wanted to add, Adil,
yeah,
that the online module is not a replacement for the fellowship program, because
absolutely. It's not just like
yeah,
this open day is not a replacement
right,
for the
right,
actual open day that happens. So it's a
right,
it's
yeah,
um, it's a reduced form of the actual thing. But I think, like I mentioned, for people who are unable to join the
yeah,
fellowship
sure,
this year for
yeah.
some or the other reason, they can definitely um, engage with us with those online modules. Yeah, I think thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Thank you to all the alumni who've joined in. And thank you, Paras, Suhasini, Sandhya, Sai. Thank you, Sita, for also joining us.
Thanks, Adil.
Thank you, Adil.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Thanks so
So,
much. Bye-bye.
yeah, bye. The next webinar is on 10th. That is on holistic education. So, hope to see all of you there. It's on 10th June at 3 p.m. same time. See you then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.